Clear to play.
Matthew here from miniwargaming.com, and this is another video for the Introduction to Warhammer 40k series. And this one I want to show you something really fun. And maybe it's a little biased because I like Tyranids. So I'm going to show you what happens when a monstrous creature such as a Trigon meets a tank such as a Landraider. Now the Landraider is a very strong tank. It's one of the strongest tanks available in Warhammer 40k. It's also very expensive points-wise, over 200 points in cost. The Trigon is one of the strongest monstrous creatures that the Tyranids have to put on the field. It also can cost more than 200 points, depending on which upgrades you choose to give it. So we're going to see, when we put these together, the Landraider firing at the Trigon as the Trigon comes in and attacks it, who will survive this encounter. So let's jump right into it. On the one side, we have the Landraider. Basically, this is the normal Landraider with a couple upgrades. He's got two twin-link last cannons, which are pretty good at punching through armor and through monstrous creatures. He's got a heavy bolter, which is more suited towards shooting down infantry, but it can still be used against a Trigon. We have a storm bolter, which is also usually used against infantry, but it could be used against a Trigon as well. And on the other side, we have our Trigon. I didn't give him any upgrades, so he's just a regular Trigon. So this is a 260-point model, and this is a 200-point model. Now, it's not a complete fair comparison because this is really good at taking out vehicles, and this is not incredibly good at taking out a monstrous creature who is this close starting. Like, they would start further away from each other, and it would have more rounds of shooting before it would get attacked by the Trigon. But just for the heck of it, I want to show you what happens when the Trigon makes it to the Landraider. So we'll give the Space Marines a first turn, just to give them that extra round of shooting. So a vehicle can move up to 6 inches and still shoot its weapon. So we're just going to have it sit still. But actually, no, we're going to move it, because if it moves, then it's harder to hit. So he's going to move a little bit, just so that he has counted as moving. Then he's going to fire all of his weapons. And so we've got the two twin-link last cannons, the heavy bolter, and the storm bolter. We'll start with the two twin-link last cannons. Now, twin-linked means that you get to re-roll if you fail to hit. You only get to re-roll once. Now, since he's a Space Marine piloting this, it is a 3+ to hit. So we'll do the two last cannons. And one of them hit and one of them missed, but because it's twin-linked, we get to re-roll. So both of them managed to hit. So that's the nice thing about twin-linked. Instead of it firing twice, what it does is it just has a better single shot. Now, these are really high strength against even a monstrous creature, so they only need to roll 2s in order to hurt the Trigon. So we rolled a 4 and a 6, so that's 2 wounds on the Trigon. Now, the Trigon has 6 wounds in total. Unlike the Termagants and Space Marines, this one is a multiple wound creature. So he starts with 6 wounds, so he's just lost 2, so he goes down to 4. So I'm going to use a smaller d6 to mark out how many wounds he has left. So he's down to 4. So that's a pretty good start. Next, we have the heavy bolter, and it will fire. And it's twin-linked as well, so it gets to reroll. Now it's a lower strength, so it needs a 5 or higher to hurt the Trigon. Manages to do 1 wound. And since it's not strong enough to penetrate the armor, the Trigon gets his 3+ armor save, which he makes, so he does not take a wound from that. Next, we have the storm bolter, and it does 2 hits. It needs a 6 in order to wound. It manages to do 1 wound, and the Trigon rolls a 2, which is not high enough to resist. So he loses another wound. He's down to 3 of his 6 original wounds. Now that is all the shooting for the Landraider, and it can't assault. Vehicles cannot assault unless they are walkers, such as dreadnoughts. So now it is the Tyranid's turn. So he's going to move up 6. And if he wasn't quite close enough, he could run. And running is something that you can do instead of shooting, where you roll 1d6, and you get to move that much further. So you move extra distance instead of shooting. The Trigon could shoot, but his weapon is too low in strength to even bother trying to hurt the Landraider. So he's going to skip his shooting phase, and he's going to go right to the assault phase. He's within 6 inches, so he's going to charge in. And so now he gets to attack the Landraider. Now the Landraider actually does not have any attacks in close combat, so it does nothing in the assault phase. But the Trigon normally has 6 attacks, but because he charged, he has 7 attacks. Now, in order to hit a vehicle, you see how fast the vehicle moved. If the vehicle didn't move, you automatically hit. If it moves up to 6 inches, then you hit on a 4 or higher. And if it moves more than 6 inches, you hit on a 6 or higher. In other words, just a 6. So I have to roll 4 or higher to see how much I hit this Landraider. So we've got 4 hits. Now, with vehicles, I'm not going to go through all the rules. I'm just going to show you basically an overview of how this works. Normally what you do is you take the strength of the creature and you compare it to the rear armor of the vehicle that you're assaulting. In this case, it's strength 6, and the rear armor is 14. And then you roll a die and you add it to your strength and you try to meet or beat the armor. Now, because he's a monstrous creature, he actually gets 2 dice. So he has strength 6 versus armor of 14. So I have to roll 8 or higher. If I roll an 8, it's called a glancing hit. It doesn't do quite as much damage. If I roll a 9 or higher on 2 dice, it'll be what's called a penetrating hit. And those have a good chance of destroying the vehicle or ripping off a weapon or even immobilizing it so that it can't move anymore. A glancing hit most likely will just stop it from moving or shooting next turn. It'll shake or stun the crew. It might tear off a weapon and it might immobilize the vehicle, but is very unlikely to wreck the vehicle unless you do a lot of glancing hits. So I rolled 2 dice for each of the hits. So the first one did nothing, that's a 6. The second one, that's an 8, so that's a glancing hit. The third one does nothing. And the fourth one is 11, so it's a penetrating hit. So roll for the glancing hit first. What you do is there's a table that is in the Warhammer 40k rulebook that shows you what you need to roll in order to do different things. So I will roll and tell you what they do. A glancing hit, you -2 to your roll, so it's harder to do a 5 or a 6, which is what is needed to destroy the vehicle. So we'll see for the glancing hit. You roll a 2, it gets subtracted by 2 down to a minimum of 1. So the vehicle is not allowed to shoot next turn. Now the Landraider has a special rule which will negate a bit of that, but so it's not able to shoot, just remember that. Now for the penetrating hit, I roll a 4, which immobilizes the vehicle. So we'll put this 4 on top of the vehicle to remind us that it cannot move next turn. So next turn it cannot move or shoot. That's all the attacks Trigon does. So in one turn he jumps up there, he shakes the vehicle so it can't shoot, and he tears off one of the tank tracks so it can't move. So we go back to the Space Marine's turn. Now the Landraider has a special rule called Machine Spirit, which allows him to fire 1 weapon even though his crew cannot, because the Landraider itself fires it, so the crew inside do not. So I'll fire one of the last cannons at the Trigon. He misses, but since it's twin-linked, he gets to re-roll, and he hits. He needs a 2 to wound. It ignores the armor of the Trigon, so the Trigon is now down to 2 wounds. Now, because the Trigon is still in base-to-base contact with the Landraider, during the Space Marine's assault phase, the Trigon gets to hit him again. Now this time he only gets 6 attacks because he did not charge. But because the Landraider did not move, all 6 are automatic hits. So this is what happens when you sit still as the Trigon is right beside you. So remember, we need to roll 8 for glancing and 9 and above for penetrating. So this is our first one. It's penetrating, a miss, a miss, a miss, nothing, and glancing. Once again, we only get 1 glancing and 1 penetrating hit. So let's roll for the glancing hit first. So it's 4 minus 2, so the vehicle cannot move or shoot. That is what a 2 does. For the penetrating hit, we roll a 3, which is weapon destroyed. So I'm going to destroy one of the last cannons. Now I don't think this is magnetized, so we can't take it off. Often you'll put magnets on them so that you can remove them to show that they're destroyed, but this one's not magnetized. So you just have to remember one of the last cannons is destroyed. So now it is the Trigon's turn, and he's not going to move or shoot, he's just going to assault. So he gets his 7 attacks because he assaulted, and they're all automatic hits. So we roll to see what he does. The first one misses, nothing. So glancing, nothing. Penetrating, nothing. And penetrating. This time we got 2 penetrating and a glancing. So let's do the glancing first. So it's -2, so it's -2 to 5, so it's 3, which is weapon destroyed. So I'll destroy the other last cannon. So now the Landraider does not have any last cannons. Now we'll roll for the 2 penetrating, and we get 2 6s. A 6 means the vehicle explodes, and everything within 1d6 inches, 5, in which case it's just the Trigon, takes a strength 3 hit. which case it needs a 6 to wound the Trygon. Does not wound him, and then it is removed from play. So the Trygon wins, but he's down to 2 wounds. Now you can imagine, if the Trigon was further away from the Landraider, then the Landraider would have more rounds to shoot it down. But at the same time, in a regular game, there's a lot of things to shoot at. So if he's shooting down the Trigon, there's other things he's not shooting down. So it's a really strategic game in the sense that you have to pick your targets according to what you think will do the most damage to you and what will also achieve the objectives of the game. I hope you enjoyed that demonstration of what happens when a Trigon hits a Landraider in close combat, when it gets to start really close to it. Obviously, it's a little biased because I love Tyranids. I love seeing them overwhelm their opponents. And the fun thing about Tyranids is that you can lose a lot of your guys before you even really get into the fight because you have so many extra. And so the tactic is to overwhelm rather than perfectly pick every single target. Of course, there's a lot of people, and you can post in the comments if you are a Space Marine fan or a Tau fan or Eldar fan, post below what race is your favorite, especially after you go and watch the 40k history, which we will also post a link in the video description below so that you can see all the different races from Warhammer 40k. This is Matthew from Mini Wargaming. I hope you enjoyed this video, and happy wargaming.
Visit miniwargaming.com to see our videos 1 month early.